So what is the state of masculinity today? Now, let's look at it like this. One of the probably the best examples, or one of the most symbolic examples of what masculine energy is represented in the zodiac of Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is a zodiac sign. I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the main, or maybe one of the 5 or 6 masculine zodiac signs, along with Aquarius, Leo, all of that. But ultimately, it's most masculine in the symbolism of the bow and arrow. Now, Sagittarius has a bow and arrow in it, and the bow and arrow is most symbolic of the entire purpose of man, of masculine energy, of what thumos is, or the idea of spiritedness, the spirit, which you could say is fundamentally masculine. You could say the soul is more feminine, but the spirit is that man's purpose is to direct his energy in a specific direction, in a specific place. This is what the idea of the patriarchy is. It's about man going out and aiming towards a goal and to conquer something. This is man's inner desire to conquer the world, or to conquer reality in some sense, to overcome some sort of hurdle or some sort of boundary or some sort of rule that is in society, and to reshape it in the way we want to see it with our ego or with any of these things. This is what culture is. Culture is a macro expression of the ego of which society lives in. But anyways, Sagittarius, with his bow and arrow, is the purest description of masculine energy, because it's about direction. Let's give some examples. You get in your car, you drive, you go to your job, you have a direction in life, you go and do these things, you try to create something new, you get up out of your bed, you go here and you go there, and you do all these different things. So this is fundamentally a masculine energy. And then of course you have more, meaningful, more courageous acts of this kind of action. Trying to make yourself a better person. Going to do actions and to do things with your energy to improve yourself and to improve the people and the world around you, or to improve the situation that people are in around you, and all this type of stuff. Or to pursue your meaning, your vocation, or any of these types of things. And what we see today, when we think of this masculine energy, the Sagittarian or Sagittarius energy of the bow and arrow, willpower, direction, we then think of what is most destroying of that thing. What is the energy that is bending the arrow, bending the bow, weakening the wood that allows it to strike with intentional aim? What is it that is making these things meek and weaker and damp and mouldy? It's the opposite. It's more of a feminine consumer. Well, this is the thing. Consumer culture, or the culture of today, is fundamentally a negative feminine force. And I mean negative feminine force. You obviously have positive feminine forces, but it's a negative feminine force. For example, you can see this by the nature of how things work. So the state, for example, the idea of the state, the idea of government, or the government, is a body, a place, a vessel, in which takes energy from other people to then give itself its own power. To not to create something from the power in which it is received, or from the energy in which it's received to gain that power, but instead to just stagnate with the power and corrupt and deceive and to exploit. That's fundamentally what it is. And that's where you get the negative feminine force, because of course this is the nature of the feminine. If you want to produce a child with a woman, you have to give your energy to her. And then by giving your energy, she then, as a vessel, a holding place, produces and creates the child of the future, the child of potential, which is the highest good, in a way, you could say. Or I would perceive it as the highest good. And therefore, that's positive feminine energy. But the state is an example of negative feminine energy, because it deceives and takes away energy, mostly masculine energy, or thumos, and limits man's true potential. Now, we can think of examples of this, we can think of the state. This is an interesting thing as well. You think, well, authoritarianism and tyranny and all these trigger words, they all kind of are motivated by men, and men do these things, and it must be a man thing, and toxic masculinity or something. But really, the nature of these things is rooted in the feminine, but in the negative feminine side of these things. Not the positive, because it doesn't create anything that is beyond itself. That's where you'd get the positive feminine, or the feminine which is good, the muse. Or, even in Greek mythology you would have the oracle, in which would find and muster information. In a sense, let's give the example of the Matrix. You have the oracle, right? The oracle in the Matrix is the one who gives knowledge and gives gnosis to Neo. And she's obviously giving information, giving insight. She's not trying to destroy him, like the Matrix itself, which is an example of the negative feminine. The oracle is an example of the positive feminine. So that's a good example to think about that. But anyway, the negative feminine consumes man, or the energy in which man is, which is the bow and arrow, the direction, the willpower which directs itself forward in a specific way for a specific purpose. And that gives man its meaning, his happiness, and his purpose. Now, let's think of another example that's more prominent today. And this is obviously representative. Now, when I was talking about the state, that's a more bigger image of what this specific example I'm going to give you is. The whole Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, Will Smith, Jada Smith thing. What is their situation? So that's a more microcosmic example, right? A micro example. A specific example within, celebrity culture. But what's happened there is that these men are fundamentally enmeshed into this relationship with these women, and they've become so codependent that their bow and arrows, or their will and their masculinity, is destroyed. And that's through codependency, because when you become codependent, you lose your individuality, you lose your authenticity, you lose your, you rely, this is more the case, you start relying on the authentication of other people's kind of acceptance. You rely on, before you do something, you end up relying on what this person thinks before you do it. And this is taking away your individuality and your own willpower and your own autonomy. It takes away everything. Everything that makes a man a man. Everything that makes a man point at something and make a decision. Looking at a map and choosing where in which him and his crusade of people are going to go, or, to conquer the world. You cannot conquer the world when you are enmeshed and codependent in some sort of confused relationship that himself lacks or is insecure in already, where like maybe Johnny Depp or like Will Smith, what these kind of red pill people would call a beta male, because they lack this kind of self-confidence within themselves, and therefore they rely and stay dormant or accept a certain reality. And this is so strange because you'd think that, well, Will Smith and Johnny Depp, I mean, like, these are the guys where, especially Johnny Depp, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, he could probably get any girl he wanted. But for some reason, I don't know much about the whole situation of the court cases or anything like that, but he is up for settling with a woman who takes a shit in his own bed as a form of like revenge or whatever. Like, this is something I heard recently in the news about it, that she did some sort of weird thing in his bed, and he was just like so relaxed about it, just like, yeah, you're abusing me, continue abusing me, like, I'm totally fine with it, I'm not going to try and divorce you or anything like that. And what is that? What type of man accepts that type of reality for himself? Especially when he himself could get any woman he wants, but fundamentally he doesn't have this kind of foundation for himself. But anyway, the point of why I'm bringing that up is that because it also relates to this whole thing, is that these women at play, these two women who you could say represent toxic femininity or a devouring feminine energy, are devouring these men's potential by enmeshing themselves with each other. You should never, or a man should never, enmesh himself into his wife or into his girlfriend. Like, he needs to be on his own direction continuously, because that is his job. That is his internal personal purpose, to be on the path to his own glory, to his own success, and his own direction. But what you have is that they're also, in an interesting way, representing the same kind of feminine energy which I was talking about a minute ago with regards to this state on a more macro level, but instead in a more micro level, on the level of the personal relationship. So that kind of gives you an example of the state of man today, or the state of masculinity, is that there is this fundamental kind of metaphysical energy that is in a rhythmic dance in the Western world, you could say. That this isn't just a singular thing that's happening here, but it's more a general fact, and this is the reason why, men, in a sense, it is a fact that they suffer more. I'm not going to say they suffer more, but there is, more suicides by men, more deaths by men, more, drug abuse on the side of men, all these things. They have a higher burden on them. The burden of society is more higher on them, but the society itself is falling into this kind of Kali goddess system where it's this kind of negative feminine energy in which is cutthroat and trying to drain the energy away from man in this kind of miasmic swamp to produce this modernity in which we live in today. And this, the kind of energy, or the kind of, you could say, maybe the metaphysical energy in which exists now. And it's not just a, coincidence that these things are happening in these, like, all this certain strange celebrity news, pop culture news thing is happening here, and it was only like a couple of weeks ago that this other thing happened here. It's representative everywhere because these are metaphysical energies in which are playing with each other in a kind of discoordinated dance. And it's not just, these things are not just coincidences. Nothing is a coincidence. Everything has meaning to it. Everything has a higher explanation to it. And that's what I see with this thing with the whole Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, and the whole, the whole strangeness of this kind of weak men syndrome, where you get in like, it's a epidemic, or like it's like a pandemic situation in terms of energy or masculinity or femininity, because it's one of the laws of nature. Is there's masculinity and there's femininity, there's gender, opposite genders is a law of nature. It's a hermetic law, that there are these polarities. Obviously you have the negative and the positive, but it's more the feminine and the masculine and the reality of gender in nature. And that is one way in which the mainstream media is representing something that is also on a more larger scale, which is the direction in which man is going today in the modern world. If you wish to join Myorum Society to become part of the transformation program, to become the highest version of yourself, then go in the link in the description at myorumsociety.com, and you'll be able to book in a free consultation call with me, where you'll be able to talk through with me your problems and what you want to overcome so that you can reach your goals, and how we can aid towards that development. So I look forward to talking to you, and I'll speak to you very soon.